Friends, you seen Star Trek, to go where no man has gone before. And today I'll be talking, that is, on the stars. Today I'll be taking you on a journey to the highest battlefield on the world, Siachen Glacier, where troops are fighting it out from 19 to 22,000 feet at temperatures of minus 40, 50 degrees minus, with huge amount of blizzards, avalanches, what have you. And I'll be talking about the health care that is provided by the doctors and the paramedical staff on this world's greatest battlefield. Indian Army occupied the Siachen Glacier in 1984 so that the troops of Pakistan we preempted them and we moved on in 1984. But then the doctors and the paramedical staff who are there are faced with great, unique challenges. But they gel with the troops, they work with the troops, they live with the troops, they laugh with the troops, they grieve with the troops, and they also provide quality medical care with equipment which at those places can reach barely. Like basically you have a stethoscope, you could have a HAPO bag, you have basic antibiotics and basic drugs and IV fluids available in your armamentarium. And the IV fluids can freeze at minus 40 degrees Celsius, so you have to thaw it out. And many times your polyclinic, as you may call it, is something which is deep in snow at minus 30 degrees, covered with nothing but a sheet of tin. And also you have the enemy shelling going on. Cut back to last year, 2023. On one forward post on Siachen Glacier was one Captain Anuman Singh, a graduate of the Armed Forces Medical College, just 25 years old. He was there to provide medical cover at 18,000 feet. Suddenly he realized that there was a fire that had engulfed a fiberglass hut, and there were 4 to 5 sick soldiers in that fiberglass hut. Throwing caution to the wind, this young medical officer forgot everything about his own safety, jumped in, saved those 4 to 5 lives, brought them out. But as he was picking up the last man and bringing him out, the flames engulfed him and he lost his life in the best traditions of the army. So that's the kind of bonding that takes place on the Siachen Glacier, where a medical officer works tirelessly with his men, and for him, his life is not more important than his men. Of course, Anuman Singh, married just 6 months back, was honored this Republic Day with the second highest gallantry award of the armed forces, which is the Kirti Chakra by the President of India, for his true spirit of sacrifice and giving his everything on Siachen Glacier. Now cut back to 1987, when I was on the Siachen Glacier, and we found, we just moved in and we were just 4 years on the glacier. And what kind of problems do medical officers face there, and what our troops face there? The first thing is that in those heights, on every forward post, even where there is firing going on, you have a medical officer and a nursing assistant present. So that is very, very important for building up the morale of the soldiers, because the soldier knows that if anything happens to him, here is a Dr. Saab who is ready to go that extra mile to take care of him despite the constraints. Now, what are the classical problems that are faced at such heights? The most important is high altitude pulmonary edema. You know, we have learned in physiology that at those heights of 18 to 19,000 feet, the partial pressure of oxygen is so low that water can easily fill in your lungs, and this can compress your heart and die. So the Indian Army has set up a great acclimatization schedule. The acclimatization schedule ensures that you gradually walk up. I mean, walking on the glacier with lot of walking in those in this inhospitable terrain is not easy, but everybody walks up, and as you walk up, you yourself as a medical officer or nursing assistant may have some signs of acute mountain sickness. For example, when I was in Camp 1 or Camp 2, I had severe nausea, vomiting, and headache. Of course, you take a standard paracetamol, and you do have, you can't eat much, and you just lie down. But as you gradually move up, the body gets acclimatized and one does not get high altitude pulmonary edema. That's why the first thing that is taught to a medical officer who goes on the glacier or a nursing assistant is that when a patient comes with anything, when he comes with anything at all, you must auscultate him because so that you detect high altitude pulmonary edema, and then the helicopters can come and evacuate this soldier back to base camp, where he's taken care of. And the only treatment for high altitude pulmonary edema, while you could give some drugs or oxygen, is lowering of heights. So that's the first thing that you learn, that you must prevent acute mountain sickness from developing into high altitude pulmonary edema or high altitude cerebral edema, because these are the things which can take lives. Next, of course, is hypothermia. Hypothermia is a very common condition that you will understand, because at times when patrols go, they could get lost. Some of you who must have seen TV visuals in 2016 saw that Lance Nayak Hanuman Tappa was evacuated from Bana Top, and he, after 2 days of snow, so he was suffering from severe hypothermia, and he was finally evacuated to Army Hospital R&R, where doctors tried their best, but unfortunately we lost this valiant, brave soldier. My point I'm trying to make is that in these conditions you will have, for example, if people get lost on Siachen Glacier, while a patrol gets lost, you could get severe hypothermia. There's this, we were attacked by the Pakistanis around about September of '87 for 3 days. And those were very tough days. We found that there was shelling all around, and while you had your own polyclinic or medical inspection room, as we call it in the army, which was down there, but there were shells flying all around. So any movement outside of those shells could hit you. And there was nothing to eat for 2 days. People were just surviving on chickpeas and water. And that was the fight that 2 battalions put up together to defeat the enemy. And some of it is mentioned in a lot of textbooks on Siachen Glacier. Now, what were the challenges that we faced at that time? One major challenge was that when this shelling used to take place, how do you treat these patients in these bunkers? Please understand that the moment we tried to thaw out the fluid and start an IV lifeline, the bunkers used to start dripping. And this is at -40 degrees. And the treatment for losing blood is only to give IV fluids at those heights. Now here I would like to mention how close we are knitted, the medical officers and the paramedicals, with the staff. I give an example of my own nursing assistant, a young Sipai, Ram Sevak Ocha. I was at a post and he was a kilometer above me. At night, he rings me up to say, "Sir, the senior JCO of our battalion has been very badly injured and is bleeding profusely. And sir, I'm trying to strike this IV line at these heights, but I'm unable to do so because it is blocking again and again because of snow. So sir, I'm taking the risk, taking this chap, this JCO to above the ground in a tent which has a Bukhari, so that I can give him the IV line." I actually admired at the spirit of this nursing soldier. I mean, imagine he was ready to put his life on the line of fire to save a colleague of his who was a brave infantry soldier. And at around 3 o'clock in the morning on the radio set, he tells me, "Saab, his BP has come up, he's quite all right. And now on a snow scooter, I'm sending him down to you 1 kilometer, where the helicopters would come at 5 o'clock in the morning, pick him up and take him away. So, sir, now he's all yours. But my joy was short-lived. Within half an hour, the company commander at that post rings me up, Doctor, the shell has fallen on that tent, and now your nursing assistant is very badly injured. He's bleeding profusely and we may not be able to save him. I told him, kindly just tie a huge tourniquet on his leg and give him a shot of morphine if you can. And snow scooters are scooters which take patients down 1 kilometer. And I said, please send him on a snow scooter to me. He brought him down, and the first thing, imagine this soldier when he comes to the doctor, Saab, wo saab ka kya haal hai? Senior GCU ka kya haal hai? He was not bothered about his own self. Of course, I was in a much better position at that point of time. We gave him the necessary IV fluids, we gave him the necessary injections, and then the helicopters came, and he was evacuated next morning at 5 o'clock. Here, we also work very closely with the aviation people. The army aviation is the lifeline for the medical services on the glacier. There wasn't a time when I used to pick up the phone and speak to the base camp and talk to the army aviation people, those who fly these cheetahs and chetaks that take our casualties home. And whenever I used to call them at night at 4 o'clock, the first thing they used to say, Doctor, we'll be there first light, come what may. And imagine they are flying between two peaks, snow-clad. You never know, they could hit any of the peaks. There were times when I've seen some of these brave pilots flying, just seeing the telephone cables that are going on the glacier. That was the way they were sort of navigating their helicopters, just to ensure that the soldier whom I am treating or any other medical officer is treating is brought down in time, taken down, and then, of course, when he goes down, he is taken care of. So I do definitely salute the bravery of these brave pilots, young pilots who are operating in conditions which are unheard of, but they gave their all to ensure that the medical chain of evacuation, as we call it, or a referral chain, if you may, moves. So this is the way in which the spirit is maintained on these glaciers, and that the fact that the doctor is there gives a great morale boost to the troops to fight back and give the enemy a huge defeat. Of course, day 2, coming to the next day, since there was nobody at the forward post where Oja got injured, I was told to move in to that post. And that 1 kilometer journey that we did was actually horrifying. Shells flying all over. God was with me. We reached 18,000 feet, and there was no nursing officer with me. I only had a battlefield nursing assistant. And those 2 days, it was, you had to treat these casualties, and also I had to take care of, we had significant number of casualties, though of course Pakistanis are much more than us. But then when we are running short of manpower, the instructions were given that troops from Camp 1, Camp 2 who are moving up should be lifted by helicopter and dropped at our post so that we can reinforce our post. Because that day, the post that we are maintaining, if it had gone to the Pakistanis, they would have taken control of the entire Siachen Glacier. That is the line NJ9248. Now, when these people came in, my challenge was what? Back to high altitude pulmonary edema. You're picking up a person from 12,000 feet, taking him to 19,000 feet. What will he get? High altitude pulmonary edema. So it was a huge challenge for me. I had only Lasix with me because fluid overload can only be treated with Lasix, and some analgesics like paracetamol and aspirin to give them. And these spirited soldiers, despite their headache and despite these problems, did go and fight. Then, something which I just want to highlight. Besides this, we also have problems. I also want to highlight another issue, an incident which, makes me very emotional when I remember it even now. On the last, almost the penultimate day of the battle, at around 5 o'clock, 8 Jawans trooped into my so-called bunker when there was a lull in the firing to have a cup of tea with Dr. Saab. Now I spoke to all of them. One was a JCO, 7 other ranks, and they asked me a very direct question. Sir, aren't we fit for medical evacuation? I did not have the heart to lie with them. These people had not eaten for 3 days. I knew that if I have to see their toes, I have to cut open their boots because they had swollen because of so many days of and they would have had severe frostbite because for 3 days they would have not taken off their shoes. I just told them only one thing, that yes, you're fit for evacuation, but then we are short of manpower. The answer that I got back was, sir, we have not come to be evacuated. We have come here only to tell you that we are ready to fight the next battle. Only one of these boys is a young boy. His uncle, Chacha, was martyred yesterday on this post, and there is no male in their family. So kindly evacuate this boy, and the 7 of us will go back and fight. I mean, where do you find this kind of a camaraderie and spirit? And these brave men fought the next day, and finally, the BBC reported that we fought back the enemy, and almost 200 of the enemy died in that action, and we could retain the post of Billafondla in September 87, and the tricolor still flies on that post. So what my point I'm trying to make out, friends, is that the medical services are intertwined with the soldiers at these heights. And we are there not only to treat them, but also to boost their morale. In fact, there's a saying in the army that if a Jawan reaches 92 base hospital Srinagar, he will live. That is the confidence and faith that the average Jawan, regardless, he may be a Bihari, he may be a Kashmiri, he may be from Andhra, he may be from Maharashtra, he may be from any religion, any linguistic basis. But that's the faith this guy has on us. And Captain Anshuman Singh, with his martyrdom, did justify this faith. And finally, I would like to say at the end, what is written in the base camp of Siachen Glacier for the martyrs. It says, quartered in snow, silent they lie, but when the bugle blows, they will rise up and march again. That is the strength of the Indian Army. These martyrs on the glacier are actually protecting our glacier and giving that necessary josh to our soldiers to go forward. And finally, some of them say that Siachen has brought out the best in the doctors and the paramedicals and proved this age-old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Jai Hind.